Well, here we are, 3 weeks from the NFL draft, and what seems like it's been about 3 years since the college football season ended, but it's nearly here, May 8th through the 10th in New York City, and we continue our week-by-week countdown here at SeniorBowl.com with the executive director of the Reassess Senior Bowl, Phil Savage. We started with week 7, and now we're down to week 3, and you have our game plan for the first 3 rounds, 3 being the key number.
Yeah, and of course, a few years ago, the draft was adjusted. It used to be 3 rounds on the first night, and then the remaining 4 rounds the next day. Now it's broken up. First round on Thursday night, May the 8th, second and third rounds on Friday night, and then the 4th round and beyond on Saturday. But to avoid draft day confusion and drama and not well thought out decisions under the heat of the moment, emotions and a clock running down, 10 minutes in the first round, 7 minutes in the second round, and then 5 minutes in the third round thereafter, you have to develop a game plan. And I think most teams will approach it where they really look at what are they trying to achieve and what are their objectives in terms of a position fits and players to take in the first 3 rounds. Let's take the Bears as an example. They're sitting at pick 14 in the first round. What they first of all have to do is when they assess their board vertically, they probably have 8 players that they feel like are elite in this draft, potential Pro Bowlers. So at pick 14, the likelihood of one of those 8 players falling to them is not going to happen. So they have to consider, would we move up to say pick 8, from 14 to 8, 6 spots? And they have to figure out what's the price of that going to be. In this case, as a general rule, it'd probably be a second round pick plus a flip of the third round picks in order to create enough value to go get the player they wanted. Now, if they don't want to give up that much, they could probably kick a 4th round pick to a team and move up maybe 2 spots to number 12, where the New York Giants sit, if one of those top 8 players is still on the board. And then, of course, after they decide whether they want to trade up, then they have to assess, okay, who would we take at 14? If those top 8 are gone, what's our order of preference for the remaining players? And of course, if there are players that they're not that much in love with, or there's a group of players that are ranked very closely together, then they have to consider, would we trade back? Would we be willing to take someone else's second round pick and a flip of thirds, or someone else's 4th round pick plus something else to slide back to say number 20, where the Arizona Cardinals reside? And all of that is important because what happens in that draft war room, people within that room are given the assignment, hey, you go call from Tampa Bay at number 8 all the way down to number 13, the St. Louis Rams, and then this other staff member, you go call the teams behind us from pick 15 down to about pick 20, and just let them know that we're interested in moving up, we're interested in moving back. And so what you're going to do, you're going to do that for the first round, and then once that strategy is laid out, then you're going to talk about your second round. And the Bears this year are at pick 51. Now, they'll go through the same exercise at that level. Pick 51. Hey, if any of our top 35 players are still on the board at pick 45, would we be willing to make a move up? If not, then we would just take one of our top 35 players. If they're off the board, would we consider trading back? And then the call that you have to be prepared for is there a team that is in love with a player that's still on the board at your choice, 51, that calls and said, hey, we will give up next year's number 1 for the player who they feel like has first round value. And then you don't pick at all and you take a future number 1 for next year. There are a lot of GMs that love building that collateral for the following year. And if you're not in love with a player, then sometimes that's the wiser course of action. And so after you've assessed first and second round, now you go to the third round and you do the same exact exercise. Now the difference now than when the draft used to be 3 rounds on the first day is after the first round, the first 32 picks, you can come back on Friday morning and reassess your board, re-rank the players to a degree, put them in a current order, and again go through this exercise. But I think that it's a great discussion to have going into any draft. And of course, a couple of the things that you have to remember here is putting together the combination of players. If we take so-and-so in the first round, that would probably put us in this pocket of players for round 2 and this other pocket of players for round 3, and what is the best combination of those 3 individuals to make our team better. And then the last thing that I would mention to you, Rob, in terms of draft day strategy is you always want a list of your own players in your pocket that you would be willing to trade, and then also have a list of the other teams that are literally around you, of players that you might have an interest in, where you could call a team and say, hey, would you be willing to give up so-and-so for the pick that we have right now? Now that's something that is not talked about publicly, because you never want to talk about a potential trade out in public with a player that could very well end up remaining on your team. But that's something that every GM in the league has tucked away in his back pocket and might discuss, obviously, with ownership before they were to make such a move.
I mean, it sounds like there's no scenario out there that they're not prepared for in any round. I mean, they're ready for anything to happen, and there's a preset plan for everything. It's not like, yeah, we'll throw a second rounder in there. I mean, they have a plan. They go to their chart almost, and that's what we're going to do.
And it's all about gauging the value of the pick versus the value of the player that you've evaluated in this long, arduous 9 or 10 month evaluation period. But it's a lot of excitement in the draft room. But again, about 3 weeks out, you're going to start having some smaller meetings or quorums, so to speak, of your true leadership, the people that will be pulling the trigger on draft day. And these are the kind of conversations that you inevitably have to have before you go on the clock on Thursday night, Friday night, and then, of course, on Saturday.
Well, that Thursday, May 8th, can't come soon enough. But we'll have another preview 2 weeks away coming up next week here at SeniorBowl.com.